So it's Liam Neeson's big foray into Korean cinema, alongside megastar jung-jae, as well as the actor bum-soo. This movie has star power in spades. It also carried a budget of about 14 million USD, making it one of the most expensive movies in Korean cinema. And it even has a catchphrase of, "There's a 5,000 to 1 chance of this operation succeeding," adorned on movie posters everywhere. So you guys are ready to know the question. Does Operation Chromite live up to the hype? Let's find out. Now before talking about Operation Chromite, we have to talk about some brief history. Oh yeah, history. So in 1950, when the Korean War first broke out, things were dire for South Korea. North Korea was just steamrolling the United Nations forces of both South Korea and the US. There would be battles where a single North Korean tank would show up and the South Korean army had no chance of defeating it. They had no weapons to actually destroy the tank, so they'd have to run. I know it sounds crazy, but back then, most people thought that North Korea was superior Korea, that South Korea would remain poor and the North would become wealthier over time. Yeah, I know. It's laughable now. I get it. But hey, that's what they thought back then. In fact, the United Nations forces were all huddled in a small area called the Busan Perimeter in the southernmost part of Korea. By Christmas of 1950, the Busan Perimeter would be overrun and Korea would be united under a communist flag. However, the Busan Perimeter held and one person would lead a counterattack. US General Douglas MacArthur, played by Taken star Liam Neeson, had different ideas. So now with that brief history lesson out of the way, as well as my silly jokes, it's time to get to the meat of the story. Now this movie is based off US Lieutenant Eugene Clark. So his mission was a spy mission in Incheon. It was to gather intelligence about Incheon, find out how many soldiers are in Incheon, and disarm any potential bombs and explosives. But in this movie, they adopted Eugene Clark and his squad story into a South Korean Special Ops Force led by Captain Jung Soo. Now Captain Jung and his crew undertake this mission called X-Ray, which like I said earlier is to pretty much like find intel about the defenses in Incheon, find out how many explosives are on the coast, sea mines are in the water. Now while Captain Jung and his group are doing this, rummaging around Incheon, there's this one North Korean officer, the leader of the Incheon garrison, Eiga-Man. He grows more suspicious over time about Captain Jung and his group, like where are they from, how did they get here, what's their mission. They start to risk getting caught, and that's pretty bad because they're deep inside enemy territory. So while Captain Jung and his group are doing Operation X-Ray, the movie shifts over to Douglas MacArthur and his planners on the best way to attack Incheon. Captain Jung has to hold up his end of the bargain and disarm the defenses of Incheon. Now when I came into this movie, I was expecting more of a war film, but that's not true. This movie is actually a lot more of a spy film than war. The movie also shows MacArthur butting heads with superiors from Washington, which is very accurate. MacArthur would say, we should go land where it hits him the most in Incheon, and his superiors would say, why Incheon? What are you gonna do in Incheon? It's the worst place you can land at. But MacArthur's like, I don't care. I'm doing it because I'm freaking Douglas MacArthur and Liam Neeson, and I already survived many Taken movies and Star Wars films and nonstop. I can do this too. That's what he said. No, he really didn't say that, but probably thinking that in his mind. That being said, the constant bickering and arguing between the chiefs of staff from Washington DC against Douglas MacArthur was gold. So now that we went through a brief outtake of the story, let's talk about the acting. The acting was generally solid, and that's what I would expect with, two megastars in the movie in Liam Neeson and jung-jae. So Liam Neeson's acting was pretty awkward to say the least. While he tries to put his best effort into acting as the iconic US general, it just falls flat. However, I did feel that Liam Neeson wasn't given the best lines, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Jung-jae also did a really good job as well playing Captain Jung. He showed general concern about his people. He showed those sacrifices to make during Operation X-Ray. He showed that he had to fight for the motherland. He showed that he had to fight for his side of Korea. He showed he had to save his family and friends. Jung-jae, I expected nothing less. He acted really well. Bum-soo also plays a great role as the North Korean officer, between acting nice and civil to Captain Jung, while also finding out what Captain Jung and his group are up to. The way he plays his North Korean officer, you just don't want to mess with him. This guy will just take you down. As for the next actress, se-yeon, she did an admirable job at her role as being the nurse. In fact, her acting is probably the best out of the lead stars. I can't really talk more about her role because it goes into spoiler territory, but she does a good job reacting at certain events during the movie, which forces her to change her entire outlook on the Korean War. Moving on to the special effects of the movie, the battle was well choreographed, well staged, and it was a treat to watch. Another part where the budget went into is the grandiose US fleet. As you see the fleet just building up more and more in the Busan Perimeter, you know things are about to happen. Now that we talked about the good, now we gotta talk about the bad. It's gonna be a long roasting session here. Let me get the collar up It's about to get serious in here. Now, again, I really wanted to like this movie, but it had too many flaws. And if you guys know me, I'm not the type of guy that picks on just minor flaws. I like to pick on the flaws the average moviegoer can see and be like, yeah, that can possibly ruin the movie experience. That's what I'm trying to aim for. So the first major flaw I have is just way too much good versus evil in this movie. Like, I understand in a war movie, there's gonna be some bias towards whoever's point of view that you're viewing this from. So in this case, it's the United Nations forces of the South Korean and the US forces under Douglas MacArthur. But there's way too much good guy, bad guy stereotyping in this movie. And for instance, South Koreans and US are known as good people. The North Koreans are known as evil commie bastards. That's it. I mean, I don't even think that remotely hits an accurate description of the Korean War. I know in this film the North Koreans are supposed to be the bad guys, but you can at least show 1 or 2 or 3 people that are, somewhat sympathetic to the South Korean cause or aren't totally evil. Another one was the movie wasn't as impactful as I thought it would be. Like, it didn't have that oomph that it needed, especially with a blockbuster movie that has the budget, the actors, and the hype behind it. Another thing was most of the characters in this movie were underdeveloped. Like, I actually didn't know most of the characters. The only character that was kind of fleshed out, and not even fully fleshed out, was Jung-jae's character, Captain Jung. Even Douglas MacArthur himself wasn't even fleshed out in this movie. And that's crazy because in all the promotional posters I've seen him in, Liam Neeson is in the center, Douglas MacArthur is in the center. So many of the characters are just not just even one-dimensional, they just weren't even developed at all. One example I can give you is between Captain Jung and his mother. Now, they show a few scenes where Captain Jung wants to see his mom, but doesn't want to get caught by the North Korean guards. And that was touching, and that was something they could have built on, where they could have had more mom and son scenes or whatnot. But they left it hanging. Another thing is the movie also falls into the stereotypical Korean cliche of gotta make you cry somewhere in the movie, and they try to make you cry. Towards the end, they bring out all the crying fireworks, your stereotypical cliches, your stereotypical events that will make people cry. And I don't know why Korean directors keep doing this. At least if you're gonna try to make people cry, make a good reason for it. But in this movie, there really isn't too much of a good reason why people are crying. Like, they just force it. The movie also had this weird forced romance, and while it wasn't as bad as other movies that are like guilty of this, where they just get that romance there for no reason, this movie is still guilty of it, because it tries to put this weird romance in there, and it just wasn't needed. And my biggest beef with this movie is that it made MacArthur's sole reasoning for invading Incheon and fighting for South Korea just because this one boy came up to him years prior and said, even though my friends are dead, give me a gun and I still want to fight against the communists. Really? I mean, if they put that as just one of the reasons why MacArthur wanted to invade Incheon and fight for South Korea, totally cool. Hey, I get it. The movie has to use some creative licenses to make the movie work. But to put that as the sole reason that this little boy lost those friends, wants to fight commies though, that's really, really flimsy. Especially since, war veterans are watching this movie. And I was watching this movie with war veterans that flew into Seoul just to watch the opening premiere of this movie. And I feel it's disrespectful to them. Not to mention, if you're like a history buff, you'll be equally insulted because you guys know, if you guys taken high school US history, that MacArthur wanted to actually not only like unite North and South Korea together, he wanted to kick out communism out of the Korean Peninsula and even expand the war into China. As I just explained, there's just more reasons than just a kid coming up to him saying, I want to fight commies, into saying, okay, well, that's it. That's my reason for sending like 75,000 men to invade Incheon. Just one kid said it. Let's do it. I think there's more reasons than that, and the movie really didn't touch on it at all. And just to add on to that director Lee and his writing staff had this is to bring up the patriotism in Korean audiences. But I've been talking to a lot of Korean audiences these days, and most of them are against that trend too. A lot of Koreans are turning the corner and saying, that's a little too patriotic, a little too nationalistic, even for us. To give you an example of a war movie that does it so right without any bias or any like hidden agendas or patriotism is Taegukgi. And the last flaw I had with this movie, although it made me laugh, are the cheesy one-liners in this movie. It's great. They made Liam Neeson say all these like inspirational quotes throughout the movie. What was my favorite? Oh, show me the way, son. Another one was, get God on the phone. Tell him it's me. Tell him we need more time. That one got me laughing in the movie theaters. And he has a lot more of these stock quotes throughout the movie. And in fact, I felt that Liam Neeson's character was more of just like a quotable general. I felt these cheesy lines were funny, but they were really awkward. So time for the final verdict. Watch this film if you want to see Liam Neeson's first foray into Korean cinema. Now, as much bashing as I do with this movie isn't too bad. It's decidedly average, especially with its big budget. But that's okay if you want to see jung-jae, if you want to see bum-soo, if you want to see Liam Neeson, or if you just want to see one of the big blockbusters here in Korea this year. Yeah, this movie it's not a bad watch. But if you're really looking for like like either a spy thriller movie or an in-depth war movie, you will not find this in this movie. Also, if you want to get a lot of Liam Neeson time in this movie, you won't find it in this movie either. This movie only has about 20 minutes of Liam Neeson in it. So if you guys enjoyed this movie review and want to learn more about in-depth Asian movie reviews, please hit the subscribe button below. If you guys see an Operation Chromite, do you guys agree with this review or disagree with this review? We'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. And if you guys want more Asian movie suggestions, please download our free ebook, The 108 Asian Movies to Watch, below. So until next time, we'll see you in the next video. Take it easy, guys.